Hey folks, welcome to our first week of distance learning. We are going to be doing some notes on angles. So if you want to go ahead and title your paper, whether it's loose leaf paper, if you have your notebook in your notebook, we're going to have our angles notes. And we will be doing more than 1 week on angles, but this week we're going to be focusing on the basic information revolving around angles, including what they are, how we can classify them and name them, and then some of the properties that are going to exist. Alright, so first off, we're going to start with talking about what is an angle. Okay. An angle is something that is created by two lines, two rays, or two segments that meet at a common point. So it's something that's created by two lines, rays, or segments that meet at a common point. Right, and this common point is going to be very important. Okay, it's also known as our vertex. And so it could look like this. We might have two. Remember, lines are the ones that have arrows on both sides. So we might have two lines that are meeting at the same place. This area here is that common point. So we have an angle, another angle, and then a fourth one. So if we have two lines that meet at this point, we're going to end up with 4 different angles. And this spot right here is what we call the vertex. Okay, the other option is when we have rays. Okay, a ray is like a line, but it doesn't have arrows on both sides. It only has arrows on one. So if we have 2 of those that meet at the same spot, okay, so this point right here is our vertex, and this is what we call our angle. Okay, and then segments are kind of like lines, but they don't have any arrows, right? They just end right there. So it looks pretty much like this one, but there's no arrows on the end, right? And this spot is still going to be our vertex, and then right here is our angle. Okay, so we can have angles that are formed by 2 lines meeting, 2 rays that are meeting, and then 2 segments that are meeting. Okay. When we talk about these angles, you're going to end up with pictures that have more than one angle in the same picture, right? So we have to be able to name angles. Okay. When we name angles, we name them by their sides. And their vertex. Okay, and their vertex is always in the middle. That's going to be important. The vertex is always in the middle. So we might have a picture that looks like this. And you're going to be given different letters in this picture. Let's say this is C, H, and L. If we want to name this angle, what we do is we put a little symbol that kind of looks like an angle, right? And then we use the letters on the sides and the letter for our vertex, and the vertex will always go in the middle. So we can go C, H, L. So when you see this, since H is in the middle, you know that H is the vertex of that angle. We can also name it the other way. Instead of starting at the C and going this way, we could start at the L and go that way. We have LHC, but notice in both of those options, H is in the middle because H is our vertex. Okay, so go ahead and take a second to name this angle on your own. So we should have two different options. We can have angle XBM, or we go the other way and have MBX. It's just really important that we have the vertex listed in the middle when we're naming this. Next up, we're going to talk about different ways that we can classify angles. And there's 4 different ways. And it's all determined by the size of the angle. Right, so when we talk about the size of an angle, we always talk about angles in something known as degrees. Right, so it'll always be some number in degrees, and that's what we're going to use in order to classify them. So the first way that we could classify an angle is acute. Anything that's acute is less than 90 degrees. So when we have any angle, right, and it'll give us some measurement, let's say it tells us it's 85 degrees. And this little symbol is our degree symbol. That's less than 90, so we would say that this angle is acute. The second way that we can classify an angle is a right angle, which is exactly 90. They usually look like this, and you'll either say 90 degrees, or they might draw a little square in the bottom corner. If you ever see this little square in the corner, that's the same thing as 90 degrees, which means it's a right angle. The third way that we have is something known as obtuse, which is more than 90. So anything that's more than 90 is obtuse. So let's say this is 110. That's a measurement that is more than 90 degrees. So we can say that this angle here is an obtuse angle. And then the last thing that we have is a straight angle, which is exactly 180 degrees. So it looks just like this, looks just like a line. Okay, so that's going to be a straight line. So anytime you see something that's a straight line, you should know that that's a straight angle, which equals 180 degrees. All right. Last thing we have for angles is something known as complementary and supplementary. Right? And these are just two different ways that we can describe angles. Right? If we have complementary angles, this means two angles that add to 90 degrees. So we might see something like this. So if we have these two examples, this angle is 40 degrees, this angle is 50. 40 plus 50 equals 90, so we could say that these two angles are complementary. Right, you also might see something that looks like this. They'll put this square here, which tells you that this entire thing, right, this entire thing is 90 degrees, because remember this square means 90 degrees. And they might tell you that this angle here is 35. And they want you to find this. Well, this is a 90-degree angle, and we know that this piece is 35, so x plus 35 has to equal 90. And if you think back to our one-step equations, we're going to subtract on each side. And we're left with x equals 55 degrees. The last type of example that you might see is, what is the complement to, let's say, 20 degrees? So if it asks for the complement, that's saying what can we add to this to make 90 degrees? So we have something plus 20 equals 90. And now we're back to our one-step equations. And we're left with x equals 70. So 70 is the complement to 20, because when you put these two together, it'll add to 90 degrees. Right? So complementary means 90 degrees. Right. Supplementary is two angles that add to 180 degrees. Same thing, we might see two separate angles. Let's say this one is 100. And this one is 80. 100 plus 80 equals 180. So these two angles are supplementary. Or you might see a picture like this, where we know that this is 110 degrees and we don't know what this part is. We'll notice that this forms a straight line, okay? And like we talked about earlier, anything that is a straight line is 180 degrees. So these two things together have to make 180 degrees. So x plus 110 equals 180. We want to get rid of the 110, so we subtract. And we're left at x equals 70. So we might see it in a picture like this. We might see it in a picture like that. Or lastly, just like this one, we might say what is the supplement to 50 degrees. Well, supplement means adds to 180. So something plus 50 has to get us to 180. So we're going to do x plus 50 equals 180. Subtract 50 on each side. And we are left with x equals 130 degrees. Right. So that is your notes video for this week. If at any point you want to go back and reference anything, go back, try these examples. Right? You can pause at any point to give yourself more time. But at this point you can move on to step 2 of this week's assignment, right? Which means you're going on to your practice activity. So you have your practice worksheet, your iExcel, the Desmos activity, or the Elluminate practice. You need to pick 2 of those to complete. Right? If you have any questions, join me on my office hours Wednesday from 11:30 to 12:15. You don't have to stay the whole time. You don't have to jump on right at 11:30. You can join the meeting at any point during that time. And if you just have one question, you can ask that one question and leave, or you can stay to hear other people's questions if you'd like.